Thank you for joining us for Catalyst Women. I know we said we were going to do a Facebook Live, but hey, technical difficulties. And so we're just saying not today, Satan. So we're jumping on Zoom. We're totally improvising. And we're just going to have a blast with it. And thankfully, Sarah's story is still amazing, whether it's on live or recorded. So that's just what we're going to do. And so Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. And it's so funny because like this week, one of the biggest things that I feel like that keeps coming up over and over is enjoy. It's a process. And even today, like it's a process, like Facebook didn't work. There are technical difficulties. That's life. And I think that's just a reminder for all of us is that we just have to, you can't allow your emotions and things to like get you down and drag you down, that you just have to have, you were saying earlier, just like find the joy through this and find plan B, you know? So this is such a testament to it. I'm like walking out what I'm like been feeling this week. So.
Hey, amen. We're in the mix of moving. And so like, I'm sitting literally in my room right now because this is the only wall that doesn't have boxes, it seems like, against it. So it's just, yeah, I'm like, no, it's got to be today. We're just going to make the most of it. Okay. So let's just dive in to your story. So tell me a little bit about where you're from, your family, and just kind of your early childhood.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Northwest Tennessee, a small town called Union City, Tennessee. And I went K through 12 with 89 people. So very small town. And I loved it. It was such a great experience. All of my family's kind of within a 10-minute radius. I'm an only child, so I loved it. And Rico and Char are my parents, but I call them Rico and Char. But they were just such godly examples and just raised me really well. I think one of the biggest things about my childhood is so Rico's Black and Char is white. So growing up, I think they just had a decision to make. Obviously, you can either address the elephant in the room or you can kind of sweep things under the rug. And I think the biggest thing for us is just embracing our differences. And so they were like, we're not going to allow the world to define you and tell you who you are. We know who you are. Here's your identity. You are loved. You are cherished. You're amazing. All of these things. But it was so great because I had a Black family and I had a white family. And my parents there was never any discussion negatively about the other side, because that could have been my granddad or that could have been an aunt, you know what I mean? So that's just how I grew up, that there were two sides. And, you know, but one of my favorite stories to tell is I think I was in 3rd grade and I was out on the playground and a girl came up to me and she was like, "You're weird." And I was like, "Why?" And she was like, "Because you're mixed." And I was like, "That's not weird." Because all my life I've been told you're so amazing, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. This is such a blessing that this is just how life is. And she was like, "No, you're weird because you have a Black family and a white family." And I was like, "That's not weird." I was like, "That's cool." And she was like, "No, it's not." And I was like, "Well, you're just boring because you only have one color family. I have 2. And I was like, 2 is better than 1. Everyone knows that. And I think that story just sets kind of like the precedence for my life, is because that totally could have been a moment that hindered me or held me back or or so many things like that. But I literally turned around, ran, and probably like was on the monkey bars on the playground, you know?
And you were just fine.
Yeah, that did not define me. And I think that's what we have to do is like, who are we? What is your identity? I think by social media and things that people have said about us, we take all of these things in. And if you don't have your armor on and know your identity in Christ, then you absorb all of these words or these adjectives or things that people say about you, and really just like knowing who you are. And I just applaud my parents for just instilling that confidence within me at such an early age. And so childhood was great. It was being in a small town. I loved it. They're just great way to like know people, and that community aspect, which I think is what fuels me even more today, is just being able to know each other and be there for people and support one another. So yeah, childhood was so great. I loved it.
Man, we'll definitely have to have some follow-up conversations, because I would love to hear just your voice and your perspective, just especially with like just the racial division that we're like experiencing today across America. And you have such a unique voice, but I mean, to even have like that experience, to be able to be a leading godly female just advocate in that area. Like, I would love to just,
Yeah.
you know,
And I think
share your
that's
expertise.
when we talk about creative souls is my heart is so much on diversity, and it's not just racially but ages, and we'll like talk about that in a little bit, but that's because I think for me I saw what life was the same. It's like there are white people, there are black people, there are brown people, there are all these different types of people, and we're all
Yeah.
individually created. And I think embracing that uniqueness, I think too
Good.
often try to go too far and be like, oh, but we're all the same. But we're not. He created us individually and unique, and really embracing that uniqueness, and evening the playing field. And just one of the biggest things that Rico ever did to me, I just applaud him so much, is that whenever like a situation would come up and I'd be like, I'm the only person there. And he was like, Sarah, but if you're the only minority female or who's mixed or black or whatever, he was like, well, where are the other races? Where are, where are Latinos? Where are Asians? And I think too often we get so focused on ourselves that we don't even think of others. And so I think, especially in America, it's become a very big like black and white issue. But there's so many other ethnicities out there that we don't even take into consideration, So I think for me, that's super important, and something we've really focused on in Creative Souls Tribe is just making sure that it's a diverse atmosphere, and that people feel welcome, and of different ages, and ethnicities, and religion, and just everything, that they can show up and be themselves and just have a place to belong. And that's just like the cry of my heart, because that's how I was raised. I guess I don't know any different, but to just to just like be the heart, because that's what we're called to love people and to love them where they are. And I just applaud Rico and Char for the absolutely amazing job, because they had a tough like decision to make, and to get married in the 80s. And we're still trying to like overcome racial disparities and stuff, but yeah, they just said, this is who we are, this is who you are, this is how our family is going to be. And when you know who you are and you're confident in it, it doesn't matter what other people say. Yeah, the words hurt sometimes and you feel a little discouraged or down, but it's just super awesome to know who you are and be like, that's okay if you don't like me for some silly reason, whether my skin color or the way I talk, or where I was born or whatever, but I know who I am, and I know that I'm awesome, and maybe you'll come around and maybe you don't, but it's going to affect me.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Like, it's so good to just hear like the truth, like just being just refreshing of like, yeah, that's exactly like, I wish a lot more people thought like more in the same path line of like what you're thinking. Okay, so I know you touched on Creative Souls Tribe, and it's so good, but I don't want to go there yet. I want to like take us like a little bit. Okay, so that was a little bit of your childhood, super defining, super impactful. Obviously, like, you're growing up confident of your worth, your name, who you are, like in Christ, and just like this abundance of blessing that you have for a family, two different types of families, which is so great. Okay, so do you go to college? You go to college?
Yes. Yeah, so I went
to
school at Vanderbilt in Nashville, and so it was only 2.5 hours away from home. So it was far enough to be away from my parents, but also close enough if I needed them, they could be here. And I fell in love with Nashville, and I've been here almost 14 years now. I cannot even believe it. I'm still in Nashville, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, I just fell in love with the city, and it's changed so much in the past even 5 years, but 14 years ago, it was a completely different place. And so it's super awesome to see the growth and people, it finally being on the map. I think last time we kind of talked about whether or not I enjoyed the change. And I do, because I fell in love with Nashville 14 years ago, but I want people to know the city that I love, and that we're more than country music. There's so many restaurants here, and there's all different types of music and all different types of people. And so I'm glad that it's finally getting the recognition that it deserves. So it's super awesome to be here and just see the change and help be a part of the change as well.
Oh, yeah, you are making great waves in Nashville. Like, I'm so sad to not be there still, but like, it's okay. It's so good. So what did you major in college? How did you decide that? And going into college, what was like some of your biggest dreams? Like, as you were deciding your major, your future, like, what were you dreaming up at that point?
Yeah. So my path is totally crazy, which is why my story is hilarious because it makes no sense. So I'm very much a planner. So going into college, I wanted to be a physician. And so basically since the age of 11, I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. And I think some of it, being a first generation college student, success looked like those typical things. So attorney, physician, you know what I mean? Those like laid out things,
Yeah.
those paths. So for me, that's what I was like, well, I don't want to be an attorney. I don't want to be in finance. I don't want to be a teacher. Okay, well, process of elimination, it's just a doctor.
I'm going to be a doctor. Yeah.
Yeah. And so thankfully I was educated and intelligent enough that that was even an option. So I just went down like head first. And it's very much my personality. So whenever I put my mind to something, I'm all in. So I went to school at Vanderbilt and was pre-med and taking all these classes. And one day, one of my advisors was like, Sarah, why do you want to be a doctor? And I was like, well, I love helping people. I want to do medical missions because also when I was 11, I was called to the mission field. And so for me, being super close with my family, you know, traveling abroad at that time as an 11-year-old felt really, really far away. And so part of it was also trying to put God in my box. So I could still be a doctor and then do medical missions when it was good for my timing versus
Wow.
just surrendering that. And what does that look like? And I also think back then missionary meant one thing versus what it means today. We're called to be missionaries every single day in our life. But I think back then the term missionary meant going overseas. And as an 11-year-old, that's a really big pill to swallow, you know, like I'm going to have to leave my family and where am I going
As
to
a 30-year-old, that's a big pill to still swallow.
Yeah. So I think that was part of it too, is trying to fit all of that into the box. How can I feel like I'm living out my calling as well as doing something that I'm proud of? So my advisor asked me this and I was like, I want to do all these things. And he was like, Sarah, he was like, I'm not deterring you, but I mean, it sounds like you kind of want to help people. And I don't necessarily think that you have to go to medical school to do that or to be successful or all of these different things. And I think it was the first time in my life that someone had genuinely asked me, what do you want to be or what do you want to do? I had just been on this path of this is what it looked like. And so then the recession hit. And so at that point in time, everyone's just looking for any kind of job because it's like, well, I'm not going to get a job in this field. And so I decided against the medical path, at least for temporary, went into my first job out of college, which was kind of project management, office management, a lot of different hats for a construction company, which is totally, completely opposite end of what I was doing. And long story short, worked for that company for a while and learned so much business knowledge. So I did finances, I did recruiting, I did marketing, I did all of these different things. One day my boss came in and was like, payrolls due at 5 p.m. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And he was like, if you want to keep this job, you'll figure it out. So I was like in tears, like at my computer, like Googling, like calling my parents' account. It's so funny. But I laugh at it now because it was that very much like sink or swim. Like you just have to figure things out. And from there, I took the grass always looks greener, which I always tell people. So working for a small business was so amazing. But at the time, all my friends were consulting and traveling and doing this corporate life and winning trips and all of this. And I wasn't getting those quote unquote perks at my the small company. And so I decided to go the corporate route. So I went the corporate route and the first year thrived. I was winning trips, getting to do super awesome things. And then about a year in, I hit this wall. And knowing myself better now, at the time, it's my entrepreneurial spirit and the fact that I need to constantly evolving and growing and changing. And that environment just wasn't one for growth and helping people move forward. Is very stagnant. And so about a year in, I got a little restless and just began to ask for like more work and more help and what can I do and how do I go further and moving up the corporate ladder. And about for 6 months, I was taking on I was training, I was doing all that, staying late after work, I was doing all coming in early, working through lunch, all of that kind of stuff. And just kept hitting this wall and they kept telling me, just wait your turn. And so at one point in time, I just looked around. I was like, I'm waiting, she's waiting, he's waiting. and they've all been here basically longer than me. And so if I'm waiting on this wait list, I'm like basically number 40 or 50 down. So I'm going to be
Oh
waiting.
my gosh.
Yeah.
A long time.
A very
A
long
long
time.
time.
And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness. And that thought that day just like triggered something in me. And I always tell the story is that I used to sit in my cubicle and look out the window, and the guy who washes the windows on the skyscrapers, which is a very like dangerous job, I would be like, I wish I was that guy. At least he's outside in the sunshine, enjoying the day, and he's not bogged down to this desk. And I was like, you know what? When you're wishing to hang from like a string from a skyscraper, we should probably like.
You know something's wrong. You know something's wrong.
So
you don't even need a personality profile assessment. You're in the wrong job
if you're willing to dangle from a skyscraper. So at that point in time, I really began to do some soul searching. One of the things I always say is I wrote down 10 things that make me happy, and it's everything from sunshine and being by the water, volunteering, fresh flowers, and I just began to incorporate those things into my life, because we know that like attracts like. So when you're surrounded by happiness and joy, you attract more of that. So I just began to like volunteer and do all the things, serving with kids. I started volunteering at church and things like that to just really help bring me out of this rut. So the last in the meantime, I also had this wild hair and my best friend at the time lived in San Francisco. And so Friday nights we would kind of have a catch up night. And I called her one day and I was like, I think I own a business, ? I wasn't confident in it. And she was like, okay. And so I had started an event planning company, and I'd always been in events. I'd always been curating outings for everyone. I love community, and being in Nashville at that point in time, about 8 or 9 years, that's when Nashville was starting to kind of be on the map. So people were asking me, where do you go? What are the new restaurants? All of that kind of stuff. And so I was already doing it for people. And I was like, well, could I get paid to do this and make a little bit of extra money? Buy some new shoes, get a new purse. That was my original.
Yeah, just like the small things that you think, and God's like, oh, if you only knew.
Yeah. So these just like little small things. And so I just started and did not know anything at the time. It's so funny. I was like, oh, I'm so naive and blind, but sometimes you just have to do it that way. But I started this business and it continued to grow, and I was becoming more unsettled at work. And the more I was working on my business, on my side hustle at the time, I would stay up until 2:00 in the morning and then working on my business and just growing and ideas and thriving. And then I would have to go to this day job where I was literally dying on the inside. And so eventually, thank goodness, business continued to grow and thrive. And even despite people saying people will never, so my specialty is bachelorette parties in Nashville. And people told me when I first started, like, you're have fun with your hobby. This is never going to work. No one's ever going to pay you to plan their parties.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it's just, that goes back to that confidence, as I was like, that's fine. And maybe they don't, but I'm going to go down fighting for it. I'm going to try and I'm going to give it my all and see what happens. So about a year and a half, 2 years in, business was good enough. I'd saved up money. This other thing, I didn't just quit my job. So there was a plan in process. I actually went and talked to a counselor to be like, am I crazy for leaving my job? Obviously I talked to my parents. I had money saved up. There was a process. It wasn't just one day I went into work and quit. So I talked to my parents, and my mom was like, then what are you doing? You've got X, Y, and Z lined up. And so a random Wednesday, I went in and put my 2 weeks notice in, and it was the best day of my life. And I've never looked back. June was actually 3 years since I quit my corporate job. And
oh my God,
I can't believe it's been that long. And it's definitely been a journey. There've been highs and lows, but it's been the best decision of my life. And so I quit my corporate job and was doing my event planning company full time. It's super awesome. And the big pivot of where Creative Souls comes in is when I quit my job, all of these women started coming to me and saying, how do you have the courage to leave? How do you run a business? How do you, all of these questions. And I was like, girlfriends, I love all of you, but I just quit my job. I'm on a very strict budget. I don't have time to get coffee with you because there are 20 of you. Coffee's like $5. That's a lot of money when you don't have, when you're trying to like figure things out. So we gathered basically 20 women in a room and just kind of asked them some questions. So we had this questionnaire and it's like, what is holding you back? What are your dreams and aspirations? How are you motivated? What do you do when you get stuck? Just like questions like that. And something happened that evening that I can't even put into words, but I left the common denominator, whether they were married or single, or they had $10 in their bank account or 6 figures in their bank account, long story short, the common denominator is fear. And that's what holds all of us back. And it didn't matter whether they wanted to apply for another job, whether they were in relationship, whether they had fitness goals, the fear was holding all these people back. And at that point in time, I was kind of on the other side of the river. I'd been bound by fear in my corporate job and crying every day for the last 6 months before I quit and wishing that I was a window washer. So I knew what that feeling was, but then I was now on the other side and knew what freedom felt like. And that's now like my goal and my passion is to just help women to be the best version of themselves and to be free and to live a life that's above mediocrity. And so it really stems from John 10:10. So we all know the first part, which is the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But the last part, which we don't really talk about a lot, is God came to give life and give it more abundantly. And sitting in my cubicle and crying for 6 months, that's not abundant life, because I wasn't being a light to anyone. I wasn't helping myself, much less anyone else, because I was just in this rut. And so that abundant life is so important, because I think for so many Christians, when we get to heaven, it's going to be so great. But that's not what we're supposed to bring heaven to earth. And we're supposed to be living out our fullest. We're supposed to be helping people and being a light and filled with joy. And that's what happened to me when I finally let go of that job. And so we just started hosting these monthly meetups with women. It just continued. It was growing quickly and rapidly. I mean, people were finding us online on social media. A girl from New York was in town for the evening and showed up to an event, and numbers just kept growing and growing. Yeah, it was really crazy. And so somebody was asking me, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, we're not doing anything, like this thing just kind of happened. And my business coach at the time, she was like, what are you doing the Creative Souls Tribe? And I was like, nothing. Like, we weren't calculating numbers. We weren't really taking attendance. We weren't doing any of that, because that's not, I didn't see it as that in my head. And then after about a year, we kind of ran some numbers, and we had impacted over 700 women had come through our events in the first year. And yeah, it's crazy. So we just year 2 in March, and all of our numbers are growth. We've expanded to Philly at this point in time. It's so crazy to see, but what it started as is just a simple yes, of branching out and not being fearful and not overthinking it. And it's a process. I think we see success in these really big eyes as these YouTube stars or these Instagram people, or speaking platforms to hundreds of thousands of people. But what are you called to? What is your, who are you supposed to impact? And we're supposed to impact people on a daily basis. The number one has been really resonating with me this week, because all it takes is one word, one smile, one encouragement, one, just anything that you can do. I think we undermine the power of one. And Jesus only went back for the one. He left the 99 for the one. And so
good.
Yeah. And so that for me, as we get caught up in the numbers and how many people are there and that kind of thing, but if it impacts one life, then your job is done, and it's worth it. So so we're super excited. Things are still growing in our community. Like I said, we are so focused on diversity and just making sure people feel belong is a word that just really keeps coming up for me this year, and intentional with our community and authentic and just helping people grow. And I tell people, you don't have to quit your corporate job. That is not what this community is about, but it's being the best version of yourself. Because when you're the best, you're a better wife, you're a better mother, you're a better friend, you're a better employee. And to not get comfortable, to keep growing. And I think the older we get more settled in our ways, and this is how we do things, and we drive the same way to work, but change something up. I try to do something different every single day, whether it's a workout class or taking a different route or changing up my schedule a little bit. But it just keeps constantly putting you outside of your comfort zone. And then that's where God's able to use you, because when we're so stuck in our ways, and that is one of my things that I'm working on overcoming, is letting go of control and allowing him to just use me. But when we're so stuck in our ways, it's harder for him to allow us to be to impact others, because he may say, buy somebody else's coffee or things like that. And you have to be open to that change, and not second guessing things, and knowing that it's a process.
Yeah.
We're constantly growing. I always say, like, be better than you were yesterday, and not better than someone else or better than her or him, but be better than you were yesterday. So yeah, so it's so exciting, and just so much growth and change, and it's just really exciting to see what's happening.
I love it. Okay, so as you're in transition from getting from fear to freedom, what were some of the biggest lies that you felt like the enemy was really screaming in your head? Like, and what would you tell somebody maybe walking that similar season now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that I'm not good enough. And I think we all have felt that at times, is that I'll never make it. I don't have enough money, and one of the things that one of my mentors said to me is that the enemy always attacks what your name means. So if you don't know what your name means, look it up. So my name, Sarah, means princess, and he always attacks you with the opposite of what your name means. And so for the opposite of princess is a commoner, a pauper, things like that. So that's where he always attacks you. And I think for me, being a first generation college student, there's always this sense of like, oh no, literally until 3 years ago, I didn't tell anyone that I was a first generation college student, because I was embarrassed by it. And so it's so funny, like one of my friends at Vanderbilt, I went to dinner with she and her mom, and her mom was like, what? Like, that makes me respect you even more. I had no idea that you came to this top 10, 15 university, and that you had never, that your parents, you have no background and no education and things like that.
Wow.
I think a lot of times we hide behind the things that are actually our biggest stories and testimonies. And so really just learning to embrace that and to utilize it, because now I share, and I can inspire and encourage other people who are also first generation college students, so it's super exciting to really just embrace that. But I think tearing those lies that he places in your head, I think one of the biggest things is putting on the armor of God. So in Ephesians 6, one day I was leaving I was heading to my corporate job, and God just reminded me, and he said, would you ever leave the house without your pants on? And I was like, no, obviously. And he said, then why do you walk out of the house every single day without an armor on? Because you're going into a battlefield. So that for me, so I printed out the armor of God. It's up on my mirror. Put things up on your mirror or in your dashboard in your car. I have 3 verses that I kind of like rotate out. So constantly have like the word and things to encourage you, because life is tough. We know that we're going to have bad times. So what are you doing to prepare yourself for those rough times? I think that's something that we don't think about. And I think that is why a lot of times we spiral even further than normal, because we aren't prepared. And so having, whether it's people in your life or words of encouragement, also in business, there are days that I want to throw in the towel, that I'm like, I'm over this, this is too much. But I have a folder in my email account that says, remember why, because you always have to go back to, why did you start this? Why did God call me to this? And I go back and I start reading those emails, and then I get encouraged, and I'm like, okay, today is a rough day, but tomorrow's a new day. And look at the impact that we've had on people's lives. And look, if we had never started this tribe, what would have happened? If I never started the event planning company, what would have happened? So do whatever, whether it's a jar that you put, your wins in. Mondays for the tribe, we do Monday wins. So we have people just celebrate something exciting that's happened in their life. And it could be, I showed up today. I woke up this morning. That's a win. But it could be something really big. I got a new job. I finished a book that I've been working on for 7 years. But when you start to celebrate and encourage, like, not only are you encouraging yourself, but you start encouraging others, because somebody else is like, oh, she finished a book. Well, I've always wanted to write a book. If she can do it, I can do it. And so those Me Too moments continue to like build, and you just champion one another. And that's what the tribe is all about. Is just having a support system of people who authentically champion you and encourage you. So yeah, find those things to put in your life. And I am a big journaler, so I always write my dreams and my goals down and continue circling them. So I do annually the Draw the Circle, which is by Mark Batterson. So I do the 40-day prayer challenge, but just reading those stories in the Circle Maker to not give up, because it's so, that's what happens. Like life is not as, and Jesus doesn't move as quickly as I was like him to, but that's life. It's a process. Yeah. And during those seasons where you're, I always think about a seed. When a seed gets planted, it's really dark and it feels like it's covered and that nothing is happening, but it's sprouting roots, it's germinating, it's getting acclimated with the soil so that it can spring forth and continue to grow. But in that season of covering with the soil on top of you, it feels lonely sometimes. It feels dark. It feels like you're not making any progress. And so what are you doing in that meantime? Don't quit circling those dreams. Don't quit. Don't give up, because, I just keep saying, I always think about the people of Jericho. They marched around 7 times. What if they had stopped on day 6? The walls would have never come down. And so what if tomorrow is the day? What if today is the day that your miracle is going to happen? What if today is the day that you meet your husband? Or what if today is the day that you walk into a coffee shop and somebody's there and offers you money that you need? I mean, you never know what can happen. And so just be expectant, and just keep going. Like, don't give up. And I was telling a friend the other day, I was like, I'm too stubborn. Like, I'm tired of circling, but I'm too stubborn to give up, because tomorrow could be the day. So I'm not quitting. But there's days that you get tired, of circling, and you're like, when is it going to happen? But you just have to go back to your why. Why did you start this? Why did you get married? Go back to those vows that you and your husband made. When life gets hectic and children and just life gets in the way, why did you start this career? Why did you start on this fitness journey? Whatever it is, just go back to why you started. Because there are days it's tough, but to just go back to that and remember like your freedom. And I always think back to those days that I cried for 6 months. And I'm like, even on my worst day of running businesses, it does not compare to my best day there. And so you just have to have perspective and really like shift your mindset. Surround yourself with positive people. That is so key. Get negativity out of your life. That is key.
Hey, amen.
You cannot have people who don't dream with you, who don't want to go with you. I think another thing is like, you don't have to share your dreams with everyone. Find those people who will really truly stand with you. I've got some audacious dreams, like crazy huge dreams, for the tribe, for my life, for
social. This is why we're friends.
Yes. And you can't tell those people. I mean, when I started Social Bliss, people were like, that's crazy. It's never going to happen. But I had these people around me that were like, you can do this, keep going, so you just have to like find those people and really, find your soul sisters and brothers. So
that's good. I love it. I heard a quote the other day, and as you're saying all this, it just made me think of it, where it's like everybody has influence. Some people's roles are more visible than others. Mm-hmm. And just that idea of whatever community, and even if you're a direct sphere of influence, like right now I'm, stay-at-home mom, but like, so one of my direct spheres of influence are my kids, my husband, so I get to be that change directly right here in this season, and then there will be a season where there's another sphere of influence, and to go be that, but you just have such like good practical takeaways that you don't have to do anything else. You can just start doing today. Like, I don't have to go read another book. I can just make my list of 10 things that I like today. I don't have to go plant flowers. I can go to a park and just take a walk. It's like, I love flowers. I love sunshine. Like, I can just start incorporating some of that stuff. And I, one of the things I love most about your story, and this is so evident in your life, like if anybody follows you on social media, they just see this through and through, but it was, you didn't like your life. And so you realized nobody was going to change that for you. And so you had to create the life that you so wanted. Yeah. And I always think of you as you are in this constant, relentless pursuit for God's best and abundance in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, you know, it's not just like to hustle, but it's this promise that you're standing on as a daughter of the King, to know what he has promised you, what he has spoken over you, and you're going after it. And your life and your story is just a testament of the goodness of that faithfulness when you are in that pursuit.
I love that. Yeah. Well, because you just have to remember his promises are yes and amen. And if you feel like the promises aren't coming true, just keep going, because his word never returns void. So if he's told you something that will come true, and you might have to walk 100 more yards to get to the promise, but it's coming, and to not give up. And I've just seen his faithfulness time and time again. And so I go back to those times and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little weak and I don't feel like I trust you right now, but I remember when. I mean, I've seen my dad healed. I've seen financially in my business. I've just seen him over and over and over prove himself. And so he's a good father. He wants the best, the absolute best for us. And so sometimes closed doors, they feel like rejection or hurt, but they're actually protection for us. So that rejection is protection. And so it's just like a parent. You don't let your kids play in the street because they could potentially get hurt. So there are boundaries there, whether there's a fence in your yard, or they know don't go past the sidewalk, or whatever it is. And that's the same thing with God, is he's just protecting us and wants the absolute best for us, because he wants to be glorified. So the further we get in life, the more we do, the more lives we touch, like it goes back to glorifying him. And so giving him all the praise. And my life is just a testament of how good he is, and that he wants us to live an abundant life. And I think, we get in this woe is me, or, God bless me. But one of the biggest things I would say is that from freedom to, being free, is you have to be obedient. You have to be obedient. And a little bit, just a backstory really fast, is before I started the tribe, I hosted a women's community for a small group for 2 years. And that's where the foundation, every single Thursday night, I opened up my home to these women. But if I couldn't be obedient to have 7 to 10 women in my home every Thursday night for 2 years, then how could I be trusted to be faithful with a community of 700, 1,000 women,
And growing.
growing.
Yeah.
So I think start with a small thing. I think you think like, I have to write this book, I have to do this thing, but do you need to write a daily Instagram post? Do you need to write a blog? Do you need to open up your home? Do you need to buy some coffee? Like, we get so focused on the big things, but like, what do you need to do that's really small? And where are you not being obedient, whether it's tithing or giving some money, or setting aside for, I know especially from having a date night with your husband and going back to like putting your relationship first, something as simple as that. But we think of these really big things that we have to, but yeah, just start small, because he rewards your obedience and he sees it. And that's how you grow. Because from helping those women for 2 years, I learned so many things about myself in leadership, and you know what I mean? The down days when only one person came, and so just seeing that. But it's a building block, it's a stepping stone. And that goes back to, it's a process, is that he's not going to give us something that we're not ready for, because then we will misuse it. And so you've got to be obedient where you are today, and just start whatever it is. So, yeah.
That's so good. Okay. So if somebody wanted to, and they're not in Nashville, if somebody wanted to join or be part of, all that you're doing, is there a future for growth for Creative Souls Tribe past Philly? Is that like, are we privy to that information?
Yeah. So right now we're just in Nashville and Philly, but we're super excited to continue to grow. So Philly right now is really our test group. So we're seeing what works, what doesn't work, because as you know, each market is different. But yes, the plan is to continue to grow and thrive. We do have a huge online community, so they're always welcome to be a part of that in the meantime. But we've had people contact us in Denver and New York and all of these other cities that are looking for a tribe in their area. So it could be soon. So we're just, just really seeing how we grow and continuing to just grow and trust God and see where he leads us, And if it's only Nashville and Philly, then we will be obedient and be only Nashville and Philly. But if it's other cities, then we'll make it happen in other cities as well.
So awesome. Well, thank you so, so much just for like, just countless words of wisdom, for being obedient to your calling, to your journey, to your story. It's really just awesome to see. And Sarah and I actually met in a small group years ago. And, you know, yeah, like, and so to think that was like 8 or 10 years ago, like, I mean, you just never know the seeds that God's planting. And it's just like so, so beautiful to see, you know, like just those small, small things and the big growth and impact that's happening. And I love that we kind of get to like, you know, walk a little bit of this journey together.
Yeah, I know, two amazing women's communities. And thank you guys so much to Catalyst Women for having me today and just helping champion other women. You know, I think that's one of the things as we focus on is it's not about comparison. And people could say, oh, these are two women's groups and they're doing kind of the similar things. But it's not about that. It's about linking arms and being like, I'm going to champion you, you champion me, and we impact more people together. You know? So, yeah. So thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share my story and enjoying the bumps today of technology.
Thank you for being flexible and just rolling with it. Like, man, I wish you could have seen my face trying to figure out Facebook Live. I'm like, why is it? And then, you know, you're like, wait, am I missing it? Like, am I like just reading over it? Am I looking to like, anyway, Zoom it is, but we'll do a Facebook Live another time, and it will be, we'll make sure we're on top of it then. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. And I'm so excited to see what is to come for you, for Social Bliss events, for Creative Soul Tribe. And I just know God's going to do some amazing things in your life and everything that you're touching right now. It's just, it's awesome to see.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for having me and chatting with me today.
Absolutely. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. Thank you guys for joining in. And if you want to read more and hear more about what's going on in Sarah's life and just what all she's doing, make sure to click the links below. We'll share all of her links so you can stay connected to her, because I promise you will not want to miss what she's doing. All right. Thanks, Sarah. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.